hello, and welcome to the Voice with Action podcast. I am here today with Pastor Andy. Hi, Andy. Welcome.
Hi there. Hi, Deb. How are you?
Good. So Andy, his church is Christian Life Community Church in Whidbey Island. So this is Seattle, Washington area. And he was able to travel with Orphan Relief and Rescue to West Africa this year. And so I just wanted to kind of ask him about his experience. I heard that it was a really powerful, amazing time. And their church has actually been a part of Orphan Relief and Rescue for at least over 10 years. Andy's been a part of the church for 10 years, but were one of the original kind of sending churches, like when this whole organization started. So they have been supporting us thick and thin and seeing kind of the impact of what God is doing through their support. So Andy, you got to see it firsthand. Yep. So I'm curious, kind of what was your favorite part about traveling with us to West Africa?
Yeah. Well, honestly, so that's a pretty easy question. My favorite part, by far, it was spending time. There's a lot of favorite parts, but it was the people. And so I'll start at the top. We were very blessed to have a lot of just one-on-one time with Rebecca Pratt. You know, that doesn't happen. I've been on as a pastor for going on 35 years. I've been on more mission trips than I can even remember, but I've never been able to sit and have dinner and debrief every moment of the day with someone who is not only just has their hand on the pulse of everything that's happening, but is actually the president of the organization. And so that was just really special. And she's a dear friend, and her heart for the children, her heart for the staff, her heart for, every single aspect of it that was amazing. The ORR staff, I'm going to mention them several times. That to me, meeting, I have read Rebecca's books multiple times since I came here. And I always look forward to the next one because they're so inspiring. But many of the people in those books are the people that I met. And they're in beautiful places in their life serving the Lord. And that was extremely special. Those relationships have remained. And I'm not much of a texter or a WhatsApp kind of guy, but I've got my friends on WhatsApp now, and whenever I'm texting with them, I love it. They start with, "Hey Dad, how are you today?" And I literally break into tears every time. And then finally, and I don't want to talk too much, you need to ask a lot of questions, but all of the kids in the safe home, it's just seeing the younger ones thriving, but then the evening worship time with the older kids and listening to them teach the Bible and respond to what's being taught. And then these were not adults teaching; these were the young people teaching themselves and leading in the worship. It by far, the country's amazing, the villages were amazing, the ministry was amazing, but it was the people that I met there.
Yeah, I know. I agree. They're so beautiful and inspiring. So, is there a specific story that stands out to you that you'd love to share of your experience?
Yeah. So there's this little guy, and I can't say his name, of course, but he had those. I don't know if your kids ever played the game on your phone called Angry Birds, or maybe you can play it on a computer. I don't know. But these birds always have these furrowed up eyebrows, and they give you this kind of, I'm going to knock your block off look. Well, when our van pulled in, we were met by this little guy, and he is pretty new there. And he just had those angry bird eyes. And, but it was so funny because I love kids. I love people. And, I'm going to just start hugging all these kids. And then, we got into it, we realized, well, it's different here. Like their hygiene's different. And there are, there are bugs that colds and bugs, things that we don't have. And everybody's like, okay, then I start thinking about like washing your hands and stuff like that. And I think that, the enemy attacked me a little bit, and I was struggling to really love on these kids and people like I would. So this little guy with the angry bird eyes, he caught me one day. I had just confessed to the team that this isn't normal for me. I usually just want to hug everybody, and I'm struggling with overwashing. Maybe it was the beginning of obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't know, but this little guy got up on my lap while I was doing my morning devotion, and he started by doing this to my beard, and then I think he wanted to feel his chin on my beard. So he got in real close and he started doing this with his chin. The next thing I know, he was giving me a full open mouth kiss on the lips. And after that, I was like, well, I didn't get a bug. I didn't catch any germs. And I've kissed this little guy here who never seems to wash his face or anything. So it cured me for the week. But I know that's a silly story, but that was one of my struggles. I'm used to being in an environment where I can control everything. And so I had to learn to just turn it over to the Lord. And that little guy helped me do it.
Yeah. So would you say that maybe that was one of your challenges too? Was at first getting over that initial kind of the hygiene, like the hygiene's a little different for some of these kids. And then was that probably one of your greatest challenges, or was there something else that was challenging?
It's really sad to say that was a great challenge for me, but it was one of the things that stuck out to me is that, as, Westerners or, from the United States, we live in an environment like today where I'm at on Whidbey Island in the Pacific Northwest. We've had big windstorms. We don't have any electricity. And, I feel so inconvenienced by things that in West Africa wouldn't inconvenience them at all. And so, yeah, I did struggle with that. And I think the Lord did a pretty cool work in me, even though I'd never struggled with it before. I didn't know it was a problem, but it was something that the Lord had to really work through me. Now, he didn't take long, just 2.5, 3 days. And so it was a 10-day trip. And I enjoyed every minute of it. And I was, from the outward appearance, I was loving people, but even my wife could tell. She's like, you're not, throwing kids up in the air and playing and grabbing them like you usually do. And I'm like, well, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. And just kind of that awareness, even like you wouldn't have even had an opportunity to even kind of be aware of that unless being there and the Lord wanting to kind of free you up from that a little bit. That's cool. Now, was it your team that went into so there was a community meeting that you had that you were going to go in and pray, and our country director had gotten either a vision or a dream the night before of there was a hired assassin to come and hurt the country director and Rebecca, and that you all kind of were like, well, Lord, like you had to take that information and surrender it to the Lord and say, Lord, what do you want us to do? So what was that experience like for you?
Well, so a lot of that weight, fell on the country director, and it definitely weighed heavy on Rebecca. And, we felt so secure in every moment of the trip, every moment. From our actually leaving Seattle, this doesn't happen very often, but because Seattle is a place where a lot of American staff live, we actually had one of the staff that flew with us from the beginning and, took us through Paris and all the stops. And so we were like, you couldn't get better service than that. So we felt really secure in that. And the first stops, before we got into the village. And, then once you're there, there are people who are watching after you. And we had such secure feeling, not just in the people, but in who they were in the Lord, if that makes sense. Like we felt secure in the Lord, and we just went to prayer for the staff and for Rebecca, and while we knew going in that there's something heavy going on here, and we knew that anyway, just because you can feel the Lord working. I mean, it feels like when you're in the village and even there in the safe home, it feels like you're sort of the tip of the spear in his ministry in West Africa. And you can see God just changing people's hearts, and you can see the Spirit moving. And so, yeah, we went that day, and I think that was the day that, they had, coming in, we knew we were going to feed about 500 people, and they're there, the staff is there early. Another part of the staff is there early. They're preparing. And for our team, this really brought scripture to life because there wasn't many people there. We saw people walking from miles and miles, kids with their, they're going to eat. So they've got their bowls and their dishes and they're coming. But as soon as, we got in there, the people just started coming in. And it was like when Jesus was in Capernaum and the people actually were, opening up the roof so they could drop their friend down. There were people just gaping in all the windows and pushed into the side. And it turned out there were well over 1,000 people there that day. And it doesn't hold that many. And they listened so attentively to everything that was shared. The gospel was shared. Testimonies were shared. Rebecca, she didn't back off at all. In fact, we thought maybe that she might because of the threat. But she doubled down and she spoke the truth to what is going on there and what people need to know about who God is and who the demons or who they follow. And I'm not sure what I can say or not, so you can kind of help me with that.
No, you're free to. You're welcome to. Yeah, we talk about the spiritual environment there, and we talk about often how the Bible really does come to life when you're over there. Like it almost like, when you read it in scripture, you're like, oh, wow, that's what it was like back then. That's what they dealt with back then. But then you go to West Africa with you and you're like, no, these people deal with this right now.
Yeah. And I mean, it was just so crazy for us that all of those people came and there was no room in the house. You know what I mean? Like kids were just sitting upon kids. And it was just every window, every door was packed in. And then when it was over, they said, well, before we feed you, we're going to pray for everybody who wants to come. And the lines just started forming. And then the team, each of us, and there were only 6 of us on our team, and we each had a translator. And so they formed 6 lines and we just started, and we did it every day and just praying and praying. And I think that's where I love to lay my hands on people when I'm praying. And so when I was talking about the washing of hands, knowing it was more in the village that started that little thought in my head, because I really didn't know what the hygiene is, for folks who live in the village and what they might be dealing with, and so, but the Lord worked through that so much that I didn't think about it. We were just praying, in the Spirit as much as we could that God would just move. But the cool thing is that, so this 500 people that we prepared food for was well over 1,000, and everybody ate. And biblically, there was food left over. And I was like, I don't know how that happens. God, thank you.
I know. Isn't it amazing? We've heard that over and over again where where the food's multiplied, like miraculously multiplied. Everyone's fed, everyone's fed spiritually and everyone's fed physically. And it really is. It is. And I know.
It wasn't the only time that happened. It happened also when they were giving gifts to mothers of bags of rice. It was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because you were a part of being able to meet some of the mothers who had rescued their
kids. Yeah, and that was like a later on at the last village we went to, and so some of them didn't want to come up at first because maybe there's a stigma involved and things that we didn't understand. But a lot of them did come, and maybe it was to get the rice, but everybody was able to get some, and that was what was so amazing,
Right.
you know. And
Right. Yeah.
we
And
just
that was
love
the
having
idea.
it.
It was the heart behind it. Yeah, the heart behind it was to honor these mothers, to honor them with a gift and say, almost like, well done for bringing back your
Yeah,
children. And we want to
yeah,
bless you with rice because rice is really expensive right now. And
yeah. I think they felt
yeah,
that. I think they felt
yeah,
honored. You could look now. Maybe they didn't understand exactly whenever the invitation, but those that
mm,
came up, the heart was to do that, and I know that's what happened. You could tell
mhm.
they felt proud that they saved their children, and they
Yeah,
felt honored, and they should. That's a
yeah,
really incredible thing to do, and it's amazing. Yeah.
yeah. So what I'd love to hear about kind of a rewarding part of your trip or something that you just have taken home with you because I mean it's been a number of months since you've gone.
Yeah.
So is there something that just still in your mind that you're like, ooh, this is a nugget of gold that I'm just holding on to for, I don't
Yeah.
know if it's just something the Lord showed you or is teaching you, I'm not sure.
No, that's a good way to ask the question. And yeah, I mean,
Mhm,
it's so I'll answer it first in a really personal way. And I'll answer for my wife as well, Laura. Laura was on the trip,
mhm,
and like I said, we've really been blessed to travel um, all throughout. We've been in Asia, we've been throughout Central America and even South America on missions and on islands, and and this was really special for us. And it's pretty near Christmas. We went in the second week in August, and Christmas will be next week. So it's been almost a half a year. And Laura and I have walked with the Lord for a long time, and we've shepherded and discipled people. And sometimes in your life, and Deb, is that your spiritual life, you've got mountain highs, and then you've got valleys low, but there are a lot of plateaus in our walk as Christians, and we've got to learn to just keep the focus on the Lord. And I never want to plateau and not grow, but sometimes it's like that. And usually it's the things of the world, and it's our devotional life or things that take our focus off of. One of the things that impacted me the most was our worship times, and some of them were unexpected. In the van, just as we felt the kind of the spiritual struggle that was happening in the villages and in our lives, we, instead of looking out the window at what's happening in Africa, that's what you do the first day. Like, oh wow, look at this is what I thought a village would look like, and this is what I thought people would be doing as they walk down the streets, and that's exactly what I thought chickens running out of a house would look like, or animals everywhere, kids running around, half dressed. It's like this is Africa, and you do, and you're kind of mesmerized by that. But second, third, fourth, fifth, every day we just realize more and more this time is so precious with the Lord, and we need His guidance, we need His protection. And so we started just praying and singing, and staff members, we would sing in Fon, we would sing in French, we would sing in English, and that really impacted my heart. And in the evenings, I would always hear this beautiful singing, and it was girls singing. It was the older girls, probably teenagers, most of them, and they were practicing. And so I would listen, and they would always say, "Come in, come in, come in." So I'd sit in the back of the room and just pray while they would just worship and worship. And on Sunday, we were blessed to go to the church that most of the staff go to. As one big family, which was a huge blessing in itself. And the worship there was so powerful, and the dance, and so it just kept being the theme. And even in the villages, we worshiped before each time of sharing. And I incorporated that into my spiritual life. I'm not a singer. I'm not. You can tell I've got my mom was a hillbilly from Kentucky, and I've got her accent. And people are always like, "Where are you from?" Like, well, and they think it's Texas because I lived half my life there. This is definitely not a Texas accent. and it's not good for singing. But I sing so much every morning, every time I open the Word. I've always listened to music as part of my devotional life, but now I'm just singing praises to God, and I've been doing it ever since I left. And it has changed, not my study habits, not the things I do as a pastor. What has changed that, but more than anything, it's just changed my love for the Lord so much more, and it directs every day from going haywire so much more than just doing part of it, if that makes sense.
Oh,
And,
yeah. Well, it makes sense because I do think listening to music, I mean, it's as beautiful as it is, and you can pray through it. It's more passive, but when you're literally singing, from the voice that you have, that God's giving you, it really does. You're active, you're an active participant. And what does that do to your heart?
Yeah. My wife, Laura's the same way. Like she loves morning devotion, but she would always she's like me. She could do morning devotion. There'd be, there's got to be other stuff going on in the house. Coffee maker's got to be gone. There's got to be something on news, But since that trip, it's just pen in hand, head thinking, and Andy, don't walk through the room, and please don't talk to me because I'm talking to the Lord, and it's great. And it's just been like that all the time. She does BSF on this computer. That's how I knew, I could use Laura's computer today. And even though our electricity's out, I knew it would work. But she does that with a group from someone from Colorado Springs, person from New York on Thursday nights. I went on the back porch and I was worshiping. She finally had to say, hey, I think maybe they can hear you, because I was actually singing in Fawn, Jesus, Dega. I can't remember all the words now, but I was singing it every day. Is basically lift Jesus up in Fawn. And I don't even know what all the words mean. I just memorized them. And I know it's praise.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So as a pastor of your church, kind of, what have you shared with your congregation since coming back? Or because not everyone can travel to West Africa. Right. So what is it that you just would love to teach them or impart to them, or,
Yeah, that's really good, because our congregation has always had this special heart for Orphan Relief and Rescue. But it's always been a distant ministry, and we're rescuing kids. We're rescuing kids, and I've always wanted that and I've wanted to grow in our understanding and our love, and so that's what we brought back, and we shared it with everybody we can. I mean, we've had sharing nights. We continually talk about it. We've got a team going next year, and we're incorporating people. So not everybody can go, and on the island, most of our churches are more mature because it's hard for people to live here. A lot of retirees live here. And so a lot of them can't go, but they can pray, number one. And so we've already got people enlisted praying for next year's team, and we're praying and working and paying. They know that's a big deal, praying and paying, and there's going to be people that are going, and it's small. I mean, we're, I think, 7 or 8 this year, and I know 12 is maybe max. But we feel so good with, where God has us, and we're growing in relationship with the Lord as a church because of this, but we're also growing closer to Orphan Relief and Rescue. And we brought back with us a greater understanding. I never understood how many hundreds of kids are on the feeding program, and how many have been rescued already, and how immense that is. I always just kind of thought of it in that smaller safe home picture. I didn't realize how vast it was. And with each village, there's a community center that's been built or is needing to be built. And inside of it, there's so much going on for that community. And there's a church that is allowed to start there. And the biggest thing is that there are pastors and people put in place to help people grow once they accept Christ, because it's one thing to get people to accept Christ, but then to begin to disciple them and to help babies in the faith mature is the biggest deal. And Orphan Relief and Rescue and those on staff are doing that. And that's so exciting. And now we can talk about it and we can share it, and we didn't have that before. And that's why we're going to keep coming as much as we can, because we want that to keep growing. And we want people, we want people to pray more. We want them to give more too, because this is something that's worthy, that God is doing. And it's not just changing physical lives, it's changing spiritual lives. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it is beautiful that, because it is the family of God, it's God's, the body of Christ, in a sense, connecting people from, thousands of miles away, connecting them and intertwining our lives it's really cool to even think, for all of eternity, that growing the kingdom of God. It's beautiful. It really is. Sometimes it doesn't, you can't quite put words to it. So one thing I do love was going back to your worship and how impactful worship was for you. I know that your team, I remember Rebecca, like every time Rebecca takes a team, she always goes into a community meeting. She always asks God, what's your strategy? Like, how is it that you, God, want to reach the hearts of these people? And for your team, that's time together, it was worship. Like that was the theme. And going into each meeting with worship, like setting the stage with worship, setting the spiritual environment with worship. So it's cool to hear the connection of how that personally impacted your heart and how you're now even taking that home and how you're incorporating that into your life and the rhythms of your own life. It really is. It's really cool.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, we didn't, of course, we don't know everything that's in Rebecca's head. And a lot of times she doesn't know until the Lord puts it there, And so as she was planning, we didn't know. I mean, we just sensed that worship was incredibly important all the time, which I know it is, but she did have an emphasis on it. And it's crazy because I'm not the only one who took that home. We all did. And we've already written a little songbook to take with us in the van next year, so that we all, like, you don't know the words here, we're going to pray, we're going to sing.
Oh, I love it. So we always close out our time together with just kind of any kind of encouragement for a listener out there. So what would you say if to someone who might be in a place of despair or discouragement right now, with as a result of traveling, to West Africa and seeing God moving, and what would you say to someone?
That's a good question, because we talk about that all the time with our team from last year, and then our team that we're preparing already for next year is, how do we take the lessons that we learned there and share them here, Oh, okay. All right. That was one I should have thought about. But okay. So here's my thought on this is, so going back to the staff that we were able to experience these new relationships with. And so it's many people that I know have been on your podcast before. And so people can, and we'll say names, they can go back and probably capture what I'm saying here. Is that God. So a lot of times if you're discouraged in life, especially maybe this season, maybe just this blue or sad because of all that life has brought, and everybody says you have to be joyful at Christmas, maybe it's not easy. But the one thing to always remember, no matter where you're at, is that God is the one who always writes the final chapter, right? And his pen in our lives is always moving until we see Jesus face to face. And even then, I still think he's going to be changing us for all eternity, because he's endless, and we'll every day wake up to new blessings, even in new heaven and new earth. But he always writes the final chapters of our lives. And so a lot of times we're ready to quit, or we just don't think that anything's ever going to turn out. God writes other chapters. He writes the best ones of our lives. And some of the people that we met, as I said earlier, they're the people that were in Rebecca's, books early on. But this is what stuck in my mind, was that, like, this, I'll just say, this young man that I am standing here having this most amazing conversation about our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I'm seeing this person serve and lead this country in a movement for Jesus, was once abandoned, was once rescued, and from the most horrific conditions in life. And God changed this life to make it more valuable than silver or gold or anything that this earth. And that's the thought that blows my mind away. And the fact that some of those people are the ones that call me dad when I talk to them, when I text with them, and I'm like, I'm not even worthy of this. Like, there's only one dad, but I am just so appreciative to be now part of their life and to see how God is moving through them. He can do that through all of us. And he does. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andy. I agree. We can trust the God of hope. This is our Christmas season, so Emmanuel, God with us, the promise that he is with us. And he does have an amazing plan to restore and redeem. And we've seen it firsthand, not only in the work that we do, but in our own lives. So thank you for sharing your heart. And
you're so welcome.
We'll definitely get you on here next time you go. I'm excited to hear what the Lord
thanks
has
for having me.
time.
Yeah. I was actually, nervous. Pastors shouldn't be nervous. They talk all the time, but I was really nervous today, and I had a blast. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for listening to the Voice with Action podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you consider sharing or subscribing to this podcast and leave a 5-star review to help us grow? If you want to reach us or help us end child trafficking in West Africa, go to Orphan Relief and Rescue.org. That's Orphan Relief and Rescue.org. See you next week.